What's going on, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, where we talk all things Marvel and MCU, and today we're going to revisit Spider-Man No Way Home's ending because the official script has been released online. And it looks like MJ might actually slightly remember who Peter Parker is. Some of you may have read the script, some of you may have not read the script, but there is one particular line that is very interesting at the very end of Spider-Man No Way Home. A line that gives hope to all of the Peter Parker and MJ relationship fans. Peter and MJ didn't get a happy ending, but we do know that there are more Spider-Man films coming. So, is there hope for Peter and MJ? Well, according to the script, it looks like there is, and it looks like Doctor Strange's spell might not have been 100% effective. But don't worry, I'll break down everything you need to know and talk about what the possibilities are moving forward for Spider-Man and MJ, and perhaps maybe a Spider-Gwen. Of course, if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest Marvel or Spider-Man videos. Alright, now, the official script for Spider-Man No Way Home was released by Deadline.com. It's 182 pages, and it's pretty epic. If you haven't read it, it's really cool. There's a lot of subtle things that aren't said on camera, but are actually shown. But the script can be pretty revealing, and what I want to focus on right here is at the very end where Peter goes to the coffee shop where MJ and Ned are. Now, this, of course, is after Doctor Strange's spell, where he made everyone forget who Peter Parker was. Everyone, including Doctor Strange, MJ, Ned, everyone. Like Doctor Strange said, it would be as if you never existed. So any trace of Peter Parker is gone. But I'll actually read some of the script here, and then I'll focus on two particular lines that could be complete game changers for the future. So I'm going to pick up right after MJ and Ned start talking about MIT, and then MJ goes over to Peter. Peter says, are you excited for MIT? MJ is confused at first, but then she realizes he must have overheard her and Ned. MJ, right, yeah, actually, I am excited, which is weird because I don't really get excited about things. I kind of expect disappointment, Peter, because then you'll never actually be disappointed, right? And here's the big line. The script then says, a flicker of deja vu on her face, then, recovering, yeah, right. It just, I don't know, it kind of feels different this time for some reason. Okay, so this is the first big part right here. This is not said in the movie, obviously, because this is just body language and subtext, and it's what you're supposed to see, but is not actually mentioned. But this is actual confirmation. MJ has a deja vu feeling, meaning she feels like she's been here before. She feels like this has happened before. She feels like Peter is a familiar person. So right away, this kind of gives you hope, and it starts to make you wonder, could MJ actually recall everything that she's been through with Peter Parker at some point? Because it doesn't seem like Doctor Strange's spell could be 100% effective here, especially if you consider the second big thing that we're about to talk about in the script. And keep in mind, Doctor Strange has botched spells. Now, it was kind of Peter Parker's fault, but Multiverse of Madness is kind of about Doctor Strange having done things that he wasn't really supposed to have done. And there really is no guarantee that his spell is 100% effective on 100% of the people. Clearly, people like Happy and Ned, it was 100% effective on them, but maybe it wasn't on MJ. But let's continue to read this script. Cutting a bit forward in the script, this is where Peter sees the band-aid on MJ's head. Peter says, "You okay?" And MJ says, "It doesn't really hurt anymore. Is there anything else?" The script says, Peter pauses, the moment of truth, but he just shakes his head and smiles. Peter, no. Peter tucks his note back into his pocket and says thank you. MJ says no problem. Peter takes his coffee, looks over at Ned, then back at MJ and says, I'll, see you around. He walks out the door, and here is the huge part. It then says, hold on MJ, meaning the camera focuses and stays on MJ, and it says, watching Peter go with a lingering sense of ... recognition. This is huge and extremely hopeful for Peter and MJ fans, and for those who simply just want Peter to get a happy ending. Now, I'm gonna tie this into Spider-Man 4 and possibly Spider-Gwen and Miles Morales. Now, moving forward with Spider-Man 4 and the next Spider-Man trilogy, we all thought that perhaps MJ and Ned weren't really going to be in it. At the end, Peter Parker leaves everybody behind, and he is now a traditional Peter Parker living in a bad apartment by himself, moving on to a new chapter in his life. And a big thing that people have been saying, well, perhaps this leaves the door open now for Gwen Stacy to come into the picture. And yes, it is definitely possible that she could be a romantic interest of Peter Parker in the new trilogy. However, I don't think that's the way they're going to go because of this script. I think that MJ is eventually going to remember Peter Parker, whether that is him telling her everything that happened and she remembers, or the spell somehow gets undone in Multiverse of Madness, or enough stuff happens to where Doctor Strange could remember who Peter is and then undo the spell for certain people. Regardless, I do think that the spell was not 100% effective on MJ, and eventually she is going to remember Peter Parker. And I think this will happen sooner than later in the new trilogy, perhaps maybe even in the first film, maybe second film. I think Peter will get his happy ending because I think Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy are the next two big Spider-Man figures in the MCU. Remember, Donald Glover's character, Prowler, does exist in the MCU, and in Spider-Man Homecoming he talked about his nephew, who is Miles Morales. Now, of course, right now they're doing Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, where Miles Morales and Gwen Stacy are the main characters. But we as fans know, and Sony and Marvel Studios know, that we want this in live action form. Miles already exists in the MCU, and I think it would be really cool if he started out with Spider-Gwen, Gwen Stacy, and we saw them grow together, just like we saw MJ and Peter grow together from the beginning. And I do think that we will actually see Spider-Gwen and Peter Parker Spider-Man together, just not in a romantic way. What Spider-Man No Way Home did is completely open up the Marvel Cinematic Universe and whatever Spider-Man Sonyverse has going on, open them up to other Spider-Man appearing. Now, Miles and Gwen aren't variants of Peter Parker, of course, but imagine a movie that doesn't have the three Spider-Men in it, but has Peter Parker Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Gwen Stacy. This would be a great way to maybe not top, but be on the same level as Spider-Man No Way Home eventually. And I think this is the route that Sony and Marvel Studios should actually go. Peter Parker mentoring Miles Morales as he becomes Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy as she becomes Spider-Gwen, ultimately leading up to the three of them working together to take on maybe Kingpin or the Sinister Six, a true Sinister Six, which would eventually lead to Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker, getting his happy ending with MJ and Ned, and probably happy. This script right here did show us that there is hope for MJ remembering who Peter Parker is. And since it said there is somewhat a sense of recognition, I'm assuming that eventually she will fully remember Peter. Whether that's because Doctor Strange's spell wasn't 100% effective, or perhaps somehow her love is just strong enough to break through this spell. Whatever it is, it looks like MJ will remember, and hopefully Ned as well. But let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. What do you think this means? Do you think MJ will eventually remember who Peter is? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest MCU news. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.